All right, I'm going to set the stage a little bit. Why do I care about any of this? I'm not personally all that excited and souped up about technology or Web3 or anything that. What I care about is creating a healthier civilization. I care about sustainability and keeping the diversity of life on our planet thriving and beautiful and green. But how do we do that? And I think all of our challenges today, they fall back on one similar, problem, and that's coordination. The only way we're going to solve any of our challenges is if we figure out how to coordinate to solve those challenges. And the only reason we have all the problems we have right now is because of how we're coordinating. Does that make sense? So it's always about coordination. How do humans coordinate today? We coordinate with economies. We coordinate with things like currencies. And when we're using, say, the US dollar to coordinate, we're also saying yes to the US dollar system. And what is the US dollar doing? The US dollar is also subsidizing, in 1 year, subsidized oil and gas at $4.5 trillion. It spent $800 billion a year on warfare. So if we're using that currency, it's not an unbiased currency. There's a story out there that money is apolitical, and that's absolutely untrue. The money that you're using, you're supporting the system that currency is facilitating. Do we all get that then? So that's, the original foundations of seeds is, how do we change coordination? How do we design a different type of economic system? It started off a little bit further away from, using things that look like dollars, but we only started off with something that looks and acts like a dollar because that's what people are most familiar with, and that's the easiest way to kind of bring people into a new system is starting off where people are already at. So that was the idea of using, I'll answer your guys' question first about, what's Seed's roadmap real quick. So a lot of people think it's a chicken and an egg problem. They say, how do you design a new financial system? Well, first you have to get people to use it in order to have the network effect, but if it doesn't have the network effect, then no one's gonna want to use it, right? And that's kind of how Bitcoin started off. Bitcoin was wanting to be a new currency. It was promising to, replace the banks. So it had this story that it was gonna be a better currency, better than the dollar. But it took a long time for it to actually mature into a better story, the one that was actually true for it, which is this is a store of value. It's not necessarily a currency for day-to-day use. This is something that's going to hold its value and go up in value. And I think once it fully adopted that story, then people are like, oh, okay, the use case is for me to put money into this and just let it sit there. And then it could serve that use case. I watch the number go up, it's meeting my needs. I don't actually need this to buy things with anymore. So Bitcoin, started off, how do we replace the banks? And it kind of like, I feel like it was co-opted by Wall Street into another thing to speculate on. But it's serving that need really well. But what Bitcoin did do is by being that store of value story, it was able to get the network effects that it needed. So then people were wanting to adopt it. But first they were wanting to adopt it to store their wealth in it. And now there's millions of people storing their wealth in Bitcoin. What would be really interesting is that then Bitcoin switched its protocols and said, cool, now that we have a network, let's leverage this network to be a better medium of exchange. How do we do that? Well, we want to be free to use, so maybe we're going to lower our fees so that we don't have any fees. Maybe let's use some of our inflation and let the people of the network govern how we use this inflation to do more marketing or build better tools or incentivize us, organizations to actually use Bitcoin, et cetera. Because right now, Bitcoin spends $10 billion a year, which is an enormous amount of money on electricity fees. What if Bitcoin was designed a little bit differently, where it could use that 10 billion to do other things? And this is kind of where Seeds came from. So Seeds, in a lot of sense, would be obsolete if Bitcoin evolved to say, hey, we're actually going to change our protocols, we're going to be free to spend, and the $10 billion a year we spend on electricity fees, we're not going to do that anymore because we could really secure our network with a lot less, and we're going to use the rest of that as the people of the network decide. And that's generally what Seeds is in a nutshell. It's a currency that right now, it's a fixed supply, so it's meant to appreciate in value as more people adopt it. So it's the basic supply demand. If there's more demand, there's less supply, so the price goes up. It's the general story right now. Why is that the case? Because there's a lot of risk involved with adopting new currency. There isn't a network effect to use this for day-to-day. So the main use case of Seeds isn't a day-to-day currency. The main use case is investing in the change you want to see, investing into an alternative system and putting your value there, and hoping the value goes up if it succeeds. So that was the idea of why we wanted it to first appreciate in value, to compensate people for taking that risk, to come in and take that first step to get the network bootstrapped. And then when seeds becomes a flat currency, which is what we want to do eventually, is actually have it so it holds its value. So why fiat currencies are losing its value, they lose purchasing power. Fixed supply currencies like Bitcoin are going to be appreciating in value, going up. We want a currency that's flat, it's holding its value across time and space. So that if I take a loan out in this new currency, I don't have to pay back that loan 100 times more. You can imagine if I took out a house loan in Bitcoin 10 years ago, I wouldn't be able to pay that back anymore, right? So it would be impossible to take out loans denominated in Bitcoin if the price keeps going up. The inverse is true for dollars. Like, yeah, the nominal value of how much you're paying back is going down, but interest rates cover that. So what we would love to see with a flat currency is something you could price your goods and services in over time, and 5 years later it's the exact same price because it's held its value. And then what we do is, as the economy is growing, as more people are adopting this currency, then we create more currency to meet that new demand, and that's how we stabilize the price. And then it's this new currency that we're using to support the network, get more people to adopt it. If people are actually using it as a day-to-day currency, they're getting rewarded with this new currency. But that's a little bit less interesting. What's more interesting for me is how we use this new currency to start regenerating our planet and meeting some of our real needs. So you can imagine, again, Bitcoin created 10 billion. What if 5 billion of that went to subsidize local food systems? And we said, you know what, we want a currency that's backed by local food. We're gonna use 5 billion to set up community gardens, and then we're gonna say that those community gardens are gonna accept Bitcoin for selling food with, right? That's exactly what we want to do with seeds, is we're going to use our inflation to bootstrap regeneration and support local communities. Local food is a big part of what we're focused on because we would love that to be the main use case of seeds. When the plumber comes by and they're like, yeah, they did their work, they're like, will you accept this random currency? They're like, yeah, what can I do with this? We want the answer to be, you could buy a regenerative local food with it tonight. And they're like, well, cool, I eat every day. Yes, I want to accept this currency. And that's actually how Seeds started, is we wanted a currency based on local food systems. So that's the major part of our partners are peer-to-peer food platforms. A little bit more history, that's actually where Seeds began, is we began with how do we do peer-to-peer networks that people actually want to use. So you can imagine, and this happened a lot of platforms got set up to do peer-to-peer food. Someone grows food out of their house, sells it to their neighbor, everyone's happy. But if there's a marketplace taking a 10% cut every time this happens, people are going to avoid the marketplace. They're going to be like, oh, Bob across the street's selling a pie. Cool. Walk over there. Hey, Bob, I see you got a pie for $5. Let me just pay you $5. And this is what happens. A lot of people are avoiding the network because why do they want to pay a fee for routine interactions? Things like Airbnb and Uber don't have that issue because they're non-routine interactions. But any marketplace platform that has routine interactions, they tend to leak. And they don't maintain being able to continue to take a fee, continue being a middleman, right? Visa sucks, we're getting rid of them. Sure, yeah, or Seeds. That's true, cash does take a fee. And takes a part of your soul because you're supporting terrorism. So that's where Seeds began. It's like, how do we make a currency that's free to use, but that the network is still sustainable? And if the network was growing, and that growth meant people were demanding this new currency, then we can create more of this new currency to then pay salaries and pay developers who are building the network. So then we can create our own circular economy by obtaining the power that banks have had the last couple millennia by creating our own financial system. So, central banks made how many trillions recently? Imagine if that money went to subsidize local food systems. It's the exact same story. And if we had our own financial system, we could do that. So that was the story behind Seeds. We wanted to have this transitionary currency to reward people early on, but in hindsight, that was actually a problem because it got way too confusing for folks. Half the people thought it was a day-to-day currency, but didn't see the network. Other people thought it was a Ponzi scheme because price is supposed to go up. And anyway, it's hard to communicate a story very coherently. So I don't know, in hindsight, maybe it would have been easier to do it less complex. So I'll pause there. Is there any questions on the focus and what we're trying to do with Seeds? Did that at all answer your question? Yeah, you had a question. There was a question about Seeds and how it was going to get adoption and what was our roadmap. That was kind of that idea, is how do we plan? Oh, yours was around governance. That's right. That's going to be the second half of what we get into. It's so much more than that now, and I think we'll touch on this on governance. So this was just my idea when I got started with Seeds, was how do we build a new economic system? Let's have it backed by food. But the second story that came around was, well, this is going to be governed by the people that use it. So we started down the governance route and letting the people who are showing up starting to drive and direct and grow Seeds. And now it's morphed into something well beyond that, and we can get into what that actually looks like on the second half of this. But the first half, I still want to focus on Seeds, the economic side, because that's the foundation of what we're governing to begin with. So I want to make sure we're clear there.
To clarify, are you saying that this is a resource-based economy model that the platform, because with the food, so that's tangible and that's what you're basing it on, kind of? Is it?
Kind of, a little bit. It's a programmable economic system, is the more complete story. So Seeds could be a resource-based economy, because we could take any resource, we could put a token behind it, and we can distribute resources, and we could trade in resources. So we could build a resource-based economy on top of Seeds. But Seeds' first thing is changing how we coordinate. It only created a token that looks like the dollar, because that's what people are familiar with. But it's also, and we've already been running this experiment for a while, other types of tokens. We created one called Gratitude, for example. And Gratitude is our approach for crowd intelligence. So we have this concept of collective intelligence, which is part of governance. So this is how I think of the two. Collective in governance is where we try to put all of our wisdom and idea behind a set of proposals, maybe 3 proposals. And we get 10,000 man hours, looking at one proposal and crafting it really well, and then we use consensus to say, this is our decision, or whatever governance process we're using to decide on one action or outcome. So I call that collective intelligence, and there's a whole lot of ways that we can improve on that. And then I have this crowd intelligence concept where it's more like a market. In a market, we aren't trying to hone in on one type of proposal. It's everyone making individual actions, and those actions aggregate to give certain outcomes, like the price of goods and services and stuff. Do we know the difference between those two? A little bit? So, collective intelligence, lots of wisdom behind one idea, one direction. Collective intelligence, micro decisions are being made that are aggregated to make decisions. 1 second, we'll get there. So Gratitude is our approach for crowd intelligence. And what this looks like is every start of a cycle, which to us is every new moon, everyone who's a resident, people who are participating get 100 of these Gratitude tokens. And they only mean something once you give them to somebody else. So it's like a thank you. Thank yous are only meaningful once you share it with somebody. And at the end of next cycle, they're going to be reset anyway. So now Gratitude is something that everyone has in the system, and they can use it to signal people who are adding value to the system. So right now, people are showing up and giving talks and giving feedback and helping people, work their way through the system, or setting up little community garden projects. And there's a million things that people are doing to earn gratitude. And then at the end of the cycle, we see where all the gratitude flows went, and then we can send them another token, which in this case, we send them Seeds, so that we can pay people based on how much gratitude they got. And in this way, now everyone doesn't have to do a proposal. The person wanting to do the community garden project doesn't have to write up a proposal saying, pay me $1,000 to do this. Instead, they could just do it, receive a bunch of gratitude, and that's going to end up getting them paid, right? So these are experiments that we're running real time right now to redesign what does an economic system look like. There's another piece, and we call it a contribution score. So when we're creating new seeds, when there's new demand for it, how do we distribute these seeds throughout the system? We do it based on everyone's contributions. So individuals have a contribution score. One of it is how often do you use this currency, which is why we call it a better than free currency. Because the more you use the currency, the higher your contribution score. The higher your contribution score, the more of the new currency, if we need to create it, you would get. So there's no fees to use seeds, but you can potentially earn more the more you use it. There's other ways that individuals can contribute, like their reputation. So participating in governance builds your contribution score. Receiving gratitude builds it, and there's more. The other one that really is interesting is an organization's contribution score. And this is something we're getting into the rabbit hole now. And one of those metrics is how regenerative is this organization. So organizations that are going above and beyond to do good things in the world, we're actually going to give them a multiplier on their contribution score. And that multiplier could be 0. So if you're a degenerative organization, you're not going to earn any rewards in this system. Everything's still going to be free for you, so it's still better than the dollar to adopt, but it's not going to be better than free for you unless you start becoming regenerative as an organization. And the more regenerative you are, the higher your multiplier. So that means all the other ways you contribute in the system are going to be multiplied by how regenerative you are. And this is how we start designing economic systems, to start creating the right incentives for organizations to be regenerative. Because right now in our current market-based economies, there's every disincentive to be regenerative. It usually costs more, the market's not gonna serve you favorably, your stock prices are gonna go down, et cetera, et cetera. Like, companies are disincentivized to be regenerative. We need to flip that model in order to make the change that we need to see right now. That was a lot. Are we following at all? Cool. I'll pass it to Nick in case he has anything else, and then we'll ask questions for the economics, and then we'll get into governance.
Hello. Yeah, so I guess that was a lot. There is a huge amount of protocols built into the Seeds economic system, because Seeds is actually, it's not a token, it's a whole financial system. So I wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit, because it's different from other tokens in that it's not meant to, be used for trading, to make money, to extract it out, to get dollars again. It's meant to replace the economic system that we have. And I think the why is important. Why is because the current financial system affects everything. Everyone who ever deals with money is affected by the current financial system, and it has a very large negative effect on everything. So all the excess money is basically used for wars and to destroy lives, to destroy people, and to destroy value. So I feel like if we have, so for our new civilization, we can't use that financial system, it's just impossible. So we need to create a new financial system. And Seeds is one attempt to do that with all its protocols and regenerative aspects. And it also has an internal stability mechanism where the more demand there is, the more coins are going to be produced. The less demand there is, the less coins, or coins are getting taken off the market. So it kind of can breathe with supply and demand. And that's one thing I wanted to say, like, why even do that when there's so many tokens out there? I don't think there's any tokens that are actually a financial system. And the network effect is massive of these financial systems, and currently all these resources are being used to, suppress humanity or create outcomes that nobody wants, like you were saying before, where there's certain mandates that nobody wants. And the second thing is, I lost my thread now. So that was the financial system. Yes, that's why we do it. So maybe let's go to questions.
I'll build on that framing a little bit and maybe contradict something Nick said. Other tokens could be financial systems. Like Bitcoin is a financial system, much like the dollar is. But what Seeds is trying to do is be a new economic system, where the dollar is a financial system that's a subset of capitalism, which is the economic system. Seeds is an economic system to replace things like capitalism, socialism, et cetera, which are all ways to coordinate, right? So we might use Seeds the currency, which is a financial system that's part of Seeds, but that's just one function of what Seeds the economic system's doing, right? And maybe at some point we make obsolete the idea of a Seeds financial system because we found a way better way to coordinate. But I think those are things that we're still gonna have to evolve and experiment with and certainly educate people on new options. Because there's a lot of really beautiful ideas of different ways to build financial systems, but they all require a lot of education before people can actually adopt these things. Which is, again, why we started with a token that looks and acts like a dollar, because that's what people are familiar with, and that's how you can step into it with the least amount of friction and still be able to participate. But yeah, one round of questions, and then we'll go into governance.
Just really quick about what you said there about replacing capitalism and socialism. So would you see them as kind of like cultures of coordination, basically, in the way that you described coordination?
Absolutely. I mean, dictatorial communism is we coordinate because this dictator said what to do. That's not real communism, but anyway. Why capitalism uses things like market to do coordination. It says, price in the invisible hand is what's gonna help us coordinate and achieve good outcomes. Capitalism has the belief that greed is the driving force for good. And it embodies that in everything it does. So greed and competition is what's gonna drive goods and services, which is why we call them goods. As the original foundations of capitalism thought that was just good. More goods is more good. But anyway, so that was the idea, is that capitalism is a coordination metric. It's how do we decentralize coordination? And these ideas came before we had protocols, before we had computers, before we had instantaneous communication. So I think they were just limited in what was possible. It wasn't possible to decide to like build a programmable economy because that wasn't even in their thought process. It wasn't even a possibility. It wasn't a possibility to have a flat token that knew the supply and demand of an economy because we had no idea what the supply and demand was. When people are taking your coin and counterfeiting it, then your supply just grew. You didn't know that it grew. You know, and simultaneously when someone ate their coin or lost it or it got shipwrecked, like they didn't know the real supply of that currency and they had no idea the demand, who was actually using it. So it was impossible to decide to like program, you know, a stable economic system. So anyway, we can't blame capitalism and socialism and all those isms for sucking because they just didn't have the technology that we have today to do the things we can do today, my opinion.
I think a lot of great ideas are being shared, but I just want to ground it a little and just see how it's relevant to my life so that I can really understand it better, because I feel like it's, you know, and so you were talking about crowd intelligence, micro decision, and I'm still very confused about it and I'm very curious, but do I play a role in seeds and how this, or how can I adopt, or how can I be part of it, how can I benefit and contribute to it, is something I'm very interested in. How does that, this crowd intelligence, if we're now in the collective intelligence, how do we switch to that? Or, you know, so yeah, can we have a one focus point so that we can really understand this idea better? Yeah, thank you.
My role is doing a lot of the deep economic stuff, so when you talk to me, I get really annoying. But if you talk to other people in Seeds, they would be way more easy and tangible. So right now in Seeds, like a big part of what we're doing is redesigning economics and having conversations like I'm having. But a very tangible part of what people are doing is they're just going to farmers markets right now and getting people to use Seeds as their day-to-day currency and just using that to accept payments. It's free to use, so it's cool for them. It helps them create an alternative economy when this is happening a lot in Central America, when the currency they're used to using is just not present. They don't have very much access to it. There's still a lot of demand for a currency. There's still people that want stuff, and there's people wanting to offer stuff, but the medium for those offerings, it doesn't exist. The people who want stuff don't have it, and the people who are gonna give them stuff, they don't have anything to get in return. So in these communities, we've been putting in seeds, because everyone gets invited to seeds by, we send them a gift. So everyone who comes in has some seeds to start trading with. And we've been coming into these communities, giving thousands of people gifts of seeds and just watching them set up their own little community. That's an alternative economy from the one that they're engaging with. Alternatively, there's just artists that are showing up to Seeds right now, making art and receiving gratitude and getting paid for it. We're running an NFT competition right now for making solar punk art to create the future that we want and put it out there. So artists are showing up and getting paid for, you know, creating art and doing cool things. So there's a million different ways that you can show up and play. If you want to, I can give you an invite to our Discord, and it's this endless space of conversation and possibility. So there's a million different ways that you could show up, is kind of what I'm saying. Did that answer anything? Yeah.
It's just we're voting for this new system, like this new change. So like right now we might like be like the citizen and they're like this new governance and we're like, okay, we vote for you, but we also might play a role. Is that kind of like, yeah, okay.
So yeah, I wanted to ask, relating to the way people, at least currently, can buy into seeds, right? And you can purchase seeds, or like the investors originally. In the long run, do you see it's that it would be run differently, where you kind of level the income inequalities of the previous system, and people are at the same eye-to-eye level, or it's still going to be pegged in some way to the value that people had accrued in the previous system?
So how do we reduce or reverse inequality?
Is seeds always going to be linked to value measurement of the previous system in terms of being able to buy in and buy seeds?
That's an individual preference. I mean, if people are still using dollars as their perspective of what's valuable, then for them, sure, until that perspective disappears, and that's going to take a long time. That will never disappear, because that's how people just think of value. They think, what is that? It's worth $5. Okay, that's a metric people are using. But if we can create a flat currency that holds its value more than dollars, what we want to eventually see is that people can use something that's more stable to know what's valuable. We have a really substantial problem right now when inflation is taking off, is that people's perspective of value isn't changing as fast as the real value is. You know, once upon a time, a $7 an hour wage was really freaking good. Now it's nothing, it's poverty, right? And that change is happening faster than it's happening in people's minds. Right now, 80% of all dollars that exist were created in the last 2 years. Once that inflation actually kicks in, if it does, doesn't matter, then the perspective of value might have to halve. You know, if you thought $100 was a lot of money, you're gonna have to mentally shift that to $200. And that's a problem because people aren't used to that. And that's why the dollar gets to keep abusing people, is because the people's perspective of what's valuable doesn't shift as fast as the real value is shifting. So eventually, yes, we would like to see that what people are seeing as valuable is maybe linked to something more tangible, but that's going to require lots of paradigm shifts. So it's going to take time.
But right now, people can buy seeds with dollars. Okay, so you can transact it like a regular currency. It's not like limited to its own ecosystem.
I mean, you can only send it to people who are part of the ecosystem. You trade it in and out. The only way you could buy in is from buying seeds from someone who are selling them. So the only way people buy into the system is through buying seeds that are people buying out of the system, right? So maybe at some point no one wants to sell their seeds, and then there's no way to buy into it. You only can earn them. I don't know. Right now there are people who want to sell their seeds because they're earning seeds and they need to pay rent, and the landlords don't accept seeds yet.
So super curious, you know, she mentioned earlier if she has a community and the community starts accepting and using seeds, that's great, you know, because maybe it's better than a South American currency. Why doesn't she just make her own currency? Because if she starts accepting seeds, using seeds, giving her fruit and vegetable and products for seeds, surely that benefits the previous seeds holders. Surely it makes sense for her to capture the value entirely by creating her own token so that she benefits from the network effects that she's worked hard for, she benefits from the community that she's accrued, rather than, you know, if let's say she's got a community of, say, 100,000 people and they say, tomorrow we're going to accept seeds, seeds value is going to appreciate, and arguably a lot of the work that she's done is now going to seeds. When it might make sense for her to create her own token, then she's able to fully capture the value that she's put in.
I like this one. I'm literally writing an article talking about local currencies and global ones. I'll share it with you. You'll love it. Yes, in a way, local communities can capture more value by creating their own local currency. However, they don't benefit from network effects, which is why local currencies haven't worked yet, in my opinion. It's been a concept that's been around for decades and decades, but that requires every local community to do all the branding, all the marketing, all the network effects, build all the tools, and put everything together in their community. Simultaneously, yes, they benefit from all their work, but they don't benefit from all the work of the global community either. The final point of this is it doesn't help us with our real task, which is global coordination. You know, local currencies that are creating local economies doesn't help us clean up the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's not going to help us with the reforestation efforts that we need. It's not going to help new communities get adoption because there's no money to help a new community get adopted. Because we're saying they're on their own. They set up their own thing. We're going to leave them on their own devices, right? So there's a push and a pull there, but what we've done is kind of found a middle ground where we have these things called rainbow seeds, where people can make their own local community currencies that are backed by seeds. So when the value of seeds itself is going up, then the backing of their currency is also going up. So they have their own local currency, which can have its own trade, their own marketplace for it. So if people want to invest into just one community, they can't do that with seeds right now. They might say, hey, I like seeds, I want an alternative economy, but I live in Costa Rica and I want a UBI for Costa Ricans, which is a real thing we're dealing with. They can't do that in seeds because the African communities can go and sell out their seeds to the Costa Rican community. But with this rainbow seed concept, they can, because now we can create a Costa Rica currency. Actually, we can get even more targeted, and we will. We'll have a Costa Rican food currency that's for local food platforms in Costa Rica. And then they can create, anyway, I'll send you the concept, but yes, both have their own pros and cons, and I think there's a way to do both, to get both of the benefits.
How do you measure like this Costa Rican community versus, let's say, one in Africa versus one in India? Like how do they relay against one another? Is it just backed by the speculative demand?
All of it is market. So the value is going to be based off of how much people want to pay for it and what they're going to pay for it. So all of it is marketplace effects to find out the price of things right now. We don't try to say that something's worth something. But there are communities who want to do that. They say, we want to, by agreement, say that this token is worth $1. And they're just going to agree that it's worth $1, and if they do, then it's worth $1. If they all agree to that, right? But if they don't agree to that and they say, actually, it's not worth $1 because I can't sell it for $1, then the market's going to tell you what it's worth. What can you sell it for? So anyway. One more economics question, then we'll get on to governance because there's still a lot left.
Hello. You said at the start that seeds was a fixed supply coin, but you also talked about increasing the amount of coins. So I'm a little confused.
And I also talked about how everyone's getting confused, and that was a mistake to do that. So seeds is an evolutionary currency. The best way I describe this is a baby in a womb. At one part, it's growing exponentially, right? But once that baby is born, those growth protocols change, and the baby becomes an adult, they change again. So every living being has different growth protocols depending on what stage of its life it's in. And the same is true for seeds. In its first stage of life, it's a fixed supply currency, because we're trying to be a currency that's going to reward people for coming in and early adopting it, because we need to bootstrap an economy, and there's a lot of risk, and that risk should be compensated with value going up, is the belief and the bias. But once that network effect is grown, once the economy is matured, then we want to do a dynamic supply currency that's more stable, so the protocol evolves. So this is kind of a, seeds right now is a little child that's growing really rapidly. But seeds, when it's a fixed supply current or dynamic supply, when it's a stable value currency, is when seeds has now become an adult, and it's not growing physically anymore; it's growing in other ways, right? So that is a little bit confusing to talk about a currency that's meant to have different stages of its life and different protocols that govern different stages of its life. But we find that's actually necessary for complex systems, because as nature tells us, every complex system embodies that. It has birth, growth, death. I mean, in this analogy, I think we're still in the womb, realistically. I don't know if we're born yet. We're getting there. Elaborate on the inflationary mechanism. Yes, elaborate on the inflationary mechanism. Right now, seeds only comes into circulation when there's votes to put into circulation. So I'll actually show you that right now. So this is when we're going to get really practical. We'll get into governance. Could you bring up the passport? Yeah. Bring up the passport image. So right now we made 3.14 billion seeds, pi seeds. It plays pi all the way out. Why? Because every new currency is fairly arbitrary when they set what their max supply is. The reason we chose 3.14 billion is, never mind, I don't need to get into that, too much detail. Right now, seeds is a fixed supply currency, and it comes into circulation when people are voting to put seeds into circulation. So when they pass proposals. So we have seeds that are sitting in contracts that are governed by the citizens. So we have a contract that's set aside for invites. And this is for the community to come up with cool ideas to invite more people into seeds. So previous ideas was donate to this tree planting campaign. And if you donate $50 at least, you're going to get $50 worth of seeds. And then we helped plant tens of thousands of trees doing that. It was really cool. Another idea was, what's another fun one that I liked? I'll have to look it up. We've ran like 150 now, so I'm having a brain fart. Another one was just going to a local farmer's market and finding everyone who's producing local food and sending them an invite and saying thank you for being part of the local food system. But any one of those ideas for how we distribute invite seeds is a campaign that someone comes up with, puts it up to vote, and then the citizens are actually voting for what campaigns we want to pass. So that's how seeds actually get into circulation. If someone comes up with an idea to distribute seeds, the citizens say, yes, we like that idea, that gives them seeds, and then those seeds come into circulation. A big part of seeds was set aside for HIFA. HIFA is the organization that's built all the tooling for seeds. HIFA got paid by the citizens of seeds to do that, and now we have a bucket of seeds that we are selling. So when you buy seeds from joinseeds.earth, you're buying them from HIFA. At least you were. And then the citizens came along and they said, hey, we don't actually like that because there's a lot more organizations than HIFA that are selling seeds. So we actually want to take that away from HIFA, and we want to have the seed sale that's going to benefit all of the Seeds Commons organizations, which is literally what they just did right now. So now when you buy seeds from joinseeds.earth, you're buying it and you're putting it into this pool that are then being distributed by the Seeds Commons, which is, you guys can't see this very well, can you? No, that's not going to work. Anyway, I was going to show off our passport, which is the app version of it, and these are literal proposals this cycle for those Seeds Commons. So these are 5 different organizations that are helping seeds grow right now, and they're putting up their pitch to the citizens of why the citizens should let them be a commons organization and get a share of all the seeds, the revenue that is happening from people buying seeds. So those are the 2 ways seeds come into circulation. is if someone buys seeds from the commons now, the seeds that they get are now coming into circulation, because before they weren't. And when we create an invite campaign, those new seeds are coming into circulation. So the citizens right now are governing the supply of seeds by all the proposals they pass.
How many people have to vote in order to get something passed, or is it as a percentage, or what is it?
Yes. It's a percentage, it's not a fixed number. It's based on how many citizens are voting, and then it's a percentage of that. So we actually take how many proposals are up each cycle, divide it by how many citizens there are, and that's what helps us find out how many have to vote on it. Does that kind of make sense? So the least amount of proposals, more people have to vote on your proposal. So it's dynamic, but generally it takes maybe 50 people to all support something in order for it to pass. But we have a really high, we call it support or unity, which is how many people have to be in favor of something. And we have a 90% unity threshold. So it only takes 10% of people actually voting down something for it to pass. Because in our system, we say, you know, if 10% of the people are thinking something's a bad idea, that's probably a pretty strong signal, and maybe that idea needs to be improved. You know, something that's a majority rule where, you know, 49% of the people could be against something and it could still pass, you know, it's a really low tolerance for collective intelligence. It's saying really, you know, anyway. So we set it at 90, right? So 90% need to be in favor, and if you see these proposals, there's a lot of work that was done on these ones, so they're all actually sitting at 100% so far. No one's voted them down. I didn't do the work, don't clap for me.
Yeah, so if you look at crypto today, from a government perspective and regulations, they're kind of okay with speculation, you know, but they're against things like stablecoins. And I was wondering if you thought of that as a potential threat for seeds, or even the rise of central bank digital currency, for example, and how you guys are competing, you know?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm going to go on the record to say that seeds will be illegal someday. It's currently not. You know, I think Bitcoin stopped getting attacked because it wasn't actually threatening the dollar anymore. I said, cool, this is actually part of our system. We're going to co-op it. Great, not a threat. You know, stable coins are kind of a threat. That's why they're coming after them, right? But what's happening is what if they're centralized or decentralized, and if there's attack vectors. You know, what we've been working on and why it's taken us 3.5 years now to get something up is because we're going through every effort possible to make sure it is completely decentralized, which means we also move a lot slower. You know, there's a lot of ideas I wanted to pass a year ago, and if this was a centralized company and I was the CEO of it, like, it would look really different than it looks today. But fortunately, I'm not, because actually some ideas sucked, and the community came up with way better ones. So that's why it's really important to make sure it is completely decentralized, because at any junction, if it does become illegal, they don't really have a way of shutting it down. Who are they going to come after? Like, there shouldn't be anyone they can put in jail to say, stop it. You know, with a lot of the stable coins right now, there are people that they can put in jail and say stop, and they would stop it, and they can force that. So it's really important to us to make sure we're completely decentralized, and that's also where governance comes in. And why governance is probably the most important thing of what we're doing, rather than the economic policies. Does that answer it?
Yeah, I think it seems like maybe we're moving on from the economic side of things, but could you maybe just elaborate a bit more on the how the supply is locked up and it comes into the circulating supply by the proposals and buying it from where did you say you buy it from?
Yeah, right. I wish this was working. I could show graphs. Okay, so once upon a time, we created 3.14 billion seeds. We set aside 20% of it for Haifa. So that was the core team that built it, got 20%. But those are all locked up. They will only start being unlocked after this go-live point, where you start getting stabilized. And that's true for other seeds too. So we set some seeds aside for the seeds bank, for example, for running some DeFi protocols in the future when we want to algorithmically stabilize seeds. Long story. Okay, 60% of the supply of seeds was locked up, and they're only going to be starting to be unlocked after go live if there's economic demand for new seeds. So if we see that demand is increasing and we need to increase our supply, we're going to unlock some of those locked up seeds. And that will keep happening until all 3.14 billion are in circulation. And then after that point, we're going to meet new demand by creating completely new seeds. So that's all happening after go live. Before go live, we only have 40% of those 3.4 billion, which can be in circulation. Right now, only 3% of the total supply of seeds are in circulation. And how that 40% becomes part of that 3% is by the citizens voting. So when they pass a proposal to say, we're gonna unlock some of these seeds and bring them into circulation, that takes them out of that 40% pile and into the circulating supply. So that's how we're bringing new seeds into circulation, is through governance. So Bitcoin does it through every block, it's bringing new seeds into circulation. We're saying we won't bring any seeds into circulation unless a proposal's passed. But if we pass a lot of proposals, we could bring a lot of seeds into circulation.
You also said you could buy it somewhere? Or?
Right. So part of that 40% are seeds that were sent, and the citizens also passed a proposal to pay Haifa for our work. So then Haifa took the seeds that we got paid for, and we were selling those seeds. So we're considering them not in circulation if Haifa's just holding on to them, but it's still probably technically in circulation. They would sell them if they bought them from us and then sold them. I think this is getting too confusing. I'll talk to you after. We'll get into details. Long story short, seeds, there's a certain amount of seeds that are in circulation, and we only bring more seeds into circulation when people pass proposals to do so. And then when people get those seeds from a proposal, they might sell them. And when you come in and you buy seeds, you're buying seeds from somebody who got seeds from a proposal. All seeds came into circulation from a proposal. It's true for Haifa. Haifa had to show up one day and say, hey, we built seeds, we would like to get paid for it. The citizens are like, yep, you built it, check, here's some seeds. They gave those seeds to us, and then when you come to joinseeds.earth and buy seeds, you're now buying seeds that we got paid for building seeds. Now you're buying those seeds from us, right? But you could be buying seeds now from a lot of different people, and there's exchanges that are up that people got, an invite to seeds, and they either sold their stuff they sold their cacao, for example. I bought some cacao. So anyway, you could be buying goods and services, and then those people could be selling seeds. So if you show up, you might be buying seeds from them. So all seeds are being bought by someone who got seeds from a proposal originally.
On the governance aspect then, like, what kind of proposals are put into the system, and then how does that initiate the contract putting the tokens into supply? Like, is there someone who does that, or is that automated? Or?
We're going to talk after. The answer to that's more technical than they care about, I'm sure. It is automated. That's this guy's wizardry. Can we try to make this work? Oh, man. Does anyone know how to make this thing work and make it brighter? So why they're trying to figure that one out, I'm going to tell you a story. So when we started building seeds, there's a group of people, that group kept growing, and we needed to figure out how to organize ourselves. And I think all the people who are part of the ASBO conversation earlier, that was really relevant and alive for us, is what type of agreements are we going to start making? How do we structure ourselves? So you guys are talking about a lot of the software of how you create an organization, how you make agreements. Going through that process, we created this thing called a DAO, which is a play on a DAO. So a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. It's not necessarily autonomous because humans are making decisions. So we swapped out A for H, and we call it a decentralized human, or holonic, because we follow holocratic principles, organization. And basically we took holacracy and we put it in a decentralized environment where everyone needs to pass proposals and no one's really governing it. It doesn't exist anywhere other than protocols online. And I was going to show off what it actually looks like because we've been using it the last 3 years. So if we can get it up, I'd love to do that. But why they're doing that, does anyone have any real targeted questions on governance? What you would like to hear about governance going forward? You and then you and you.
Specific to governance and voting, is there any specific criteria for me if I'm holding seed to vote? So basically, do I need to stake specific seat in order for the system to register my vote? Like how the votes are evaluated within the system?
Ooh, yes, this is such a good question. So another reason why we felt it necessary to build seeds rather than just build on existing protocols is most of blockchain, if not all of it, is oligarchy, which means governance by the wealthy. So what they're saying is we're going to have a token which is for sale, and the more of this token you buy, the more voice you get. And what that's literally saying is the more money you have, the more voice you get. There's some ideas out there like quadratic voting, which is a way of like deterring the effects of oligarchy, but now it's just saying it's still an oligarchy, it's just more expensive to be an oligarchy. But anyway, so what we've done is we separated all of our governance tokens from the value tokens. So holding seeds doesn't give you any more voice or any less voice in the ecosystem. How you earn voice is how much you're contributing. One of the ways you contribute is by taking seeds and planting them. So if you've staked value into the system, you've locked it away, we're going to say that that's a contribution because it's beneficial to the system and you're going to earn some voice for doing that. But there's a lot of different ways that you can earn voice. And what we've also done, and this is where it gets a little bit more complex and cool, are all contributions are put on a percentile score. So we're saying everyone is going to land somewhere in from 1 to 99th percentile based on how much you contribute. So what this says is if I've taken up 50% of all seeds that exist and I've planted them, I don't get 50% of the benefit. I'm in the 99th percentile, right next to the person who might have 2% of all the seeds. So what we've done is we've tried to reduce inequality dramatically by putting it into percentile basis. Rather than saying if I own more seeds, I'm going to have more voice. We're saying if you own more, that's going to bring you up in the percentile, but that's going to max out at 99. Right? It creates kind of a cool game because that 99 is a moving target. As more people plant more, you're going to have to keep planting a little bit more to stay in that. But it gets rid of it being an oligarchy where the more value I have, the more voice I have outright. And it limits the playing field. And there's a whole lot of other ways that you can contribute. So you can contribute by participating in governance or even participating in the forum and just sharing your ideas and people are upvoting you and you're earning reputation for doing that. So it's not just about how much wealth you have more voice. It's how much do you contribute to the system earns you a greater voice in governance. Gratitude right now doesn't give you more voice in governance. That just is a way of getting you paid for doing things that don't require a proposal. So that's true of what we've done in seeds, but that's also true for, ooh, cool, can you bring up the do? So that's also true of what we've done with our organization. So when we've created HIFA, we have our value contribution equity token, which is called HIFA, and then we have our governance token, which we call HIFA Voice. And those are two different tokens issued two different ways. So now any organization that wants to use the do to get set up, they can decide like, hey, we want to have a one person, one vote organization. Great, you give everyone one voice token and everyone has the same vote. I think that's kind of lame, but you can do that. Or you can have an organization where people are getting paid with equity, but you're not paying them any voice. We've chose to do that with some of our investors because they didn't want to participate in governance anyway. So we said, cool, well, your investment, we're going to give you 10% of the voice you otherwise would have if you earned that money working. Simultaneously, there's an idea that we could give voice to people, like some communities that want to use this, they want to launch in a region and have a regional governance system, and they want to give voice to indigenous elders and different tribes. So they can come up and say, hey, we're just going to issue you voice because we think you're going to make really good decisions in our community. So we're going to give you some voice tokens to do that. But you don't have to give them equity tokens or value tokens or whatever you want to call these tokens or whatever they look like to you. So all we've done is we give the ability for organizations to have a separate utility token versus the separate governance token. So we've separated voice and value out of the equation. That's really important, otherwise you just have oligarchies. So every DAO right now, or at least most of them, doesn't matter, doesn't care. Well, every DAO right now is an oligarchy because they're doing token-based governance. And those tokens are all meant to be liquid. So if you can go and you can buy up this token. And the real problem is if we're trying to, defeat the old world paradigm, what do they own? They own all the fucking money. And if we just gave them a system where they could take all their money and use it to buy up all of our new systems and have all the voice, we just gave them really cool toys to play with. We didn't actually change the system. Anyway, that's more radical thoughts. So I think it's really important for communities to be able to separate the value token that is meant to be traded, is meant to have a dollar value, from the voice token. And right now, the voice token can't be traded. You earn it, you hold it, that's it. That's associated with your account. Does that make sense? So this is the kind of the next evolution of seeds. So if you think of seeds as an economic system, financial system, then all of this is how we organize within seeds. So all 5 of those proposals that you saw coming up in seeds to be part of the seeds commons, they're all going to have their own due. And this is where we're going to go over the due a little bit, unless Nick has some things. Yeah? All right, well, let me sit down and I'll play with this. Can you guys see this? All right, so this one's just kind of basic, what you see right now, and this is live. This is our actual, this is how we work. This is how we make decisions. This is how people get paid. I've been getting paid using this for the last 3 years, and this is just life for us. So these proposals are all real proposals right now. So these are contribution proposals. This is someone coming up and saying, I don't know how to use your computer. There you go. This is someone making a case for why they've made a contribution. Stop doing that. And he's asking for 876 of the Hypha token. But he's not asking any of the H-voice. Right, because he's correcting a bug. So that's lame. So there's a bug that paid him a little bit less Hypha. Anyway, that's a lame one. Let me go to something else. All right, here's one. And it's the other extreme. So here's someone that did some work. And they're saying they did $713 worth of work. Do you guys see that, $713 that I'm highlighting? You don't. Lame. Yeah, you'll believe me. Let me make this bigger. No. All right, anyway. Nope, that's not gonna work. All right, well, technical problems aside, you're just gonna have to listen to what I'm saying. So there's 4 different tokens that each due can have. We have a dollar stable token because people want to get paid in something they can stand right now. We have seeds, which will eventually be a complement to this, so organizations could choose to pay in seeds or pay in dollars. They have the voice token, and they have the equity, value, utility, whatever type of other token that that community is creating. So this lets any organization that wants to get set up using a due have a whole sandbox of how to distribute tokens to communities or to different members for doing different things. So here's contributions. How I mentioned that we are kind of following holacracy is that we have roles. So each community can show up and say, hey, these are the different roles that we have in our community. We are a village, and we have a permaculture gardener that we want to have as a role. We have a chef, we have whatever, we have a baker. Or we have a company, and we have a UX designer and a developer or whatever. So what happens is first, anyone can propose a new role. They say, hey, I see a lack that we need a permaculture gardener in our village. They put up a proposal and say, hey, let's have a role where we have a permaculture gardener and we're gonna pay him 1,000 tokens a day for doing work. The community then votes to say, yeah, we want to see that role exist. So this is how each one of these dues are decentralized from the outset. They start as a blank canvas. People show up and they say, these are the roles we want in our community, and then the community members vote for what roles they want to see. And then after roles exist, someone can come and apply for that role, which I'm not logged in, I'm not a member, so I cannot apply. So I'm not gonna be able to show you what that looks like. That's a cool new feature I didn't even know we had. Cool, and then the next one is assignments. So these are the people that are assigned to roles. So you can come to an organization and you can see, who's currently holding an assignment right now. And you can come in and see what are they doing. He's sitting here laying out everything he's done in the last 3 months and plans to do. You can see how committed they are. So now everyone gets to show up and say, hey, I'm half-time, or hey, I'm full-time, or I'm a quarter-time, or whatever. They get to say how committed they are to the organization and cause. And then the final little piece here is they get to say how much they want to take deferred, which is what we call it. So this is how much you're gonna get paid in dollars, cash, versus how much you're gonna get paid in the organization's equity token. And this is how we have an infinity treasury, is what we like to call it, because we can actually tweak that. As the treasury starts dwindling, then we just increase how much we're paying people in the equity token. And as the treasury goes up, which happened for us, we had a pretty large treasury, then we saw the inverse happen, where people started taking more of the treasury and taking less of the equity token. So it kind of starts fluctuating, based on the health of that organization. But what this does is it allows organizations to get started with no treasury at all and start earning tokens to be part of that. So we just call them a contribution token that's reflecting contributions given to the organization. And this is actually how Hypha got its start, is people just showed up, we had no money, and they were just getting issued tokens for doing work. The other cool thing that we built here, so with both Seeds and Hypha, our plan is just to build primitives, or Legos, for example. You know, in the seeds world, we wanted to have enough different economic Legos that gave us a foundation to build all sorts of different types of economies, and we just get to tweak them. So, for example, the inflation protocol in seeds is just a Lego. The citizens can tweak it. Right now, it's set to 0 inflation, but they could set that to 100 inflation. They can set it to, you know, negative inflation, which means that if tokens are being destroyed, it's not replacing them. But that just gives them a little lever that they can use to design different economic systems. And the same thing we wanted to do with HIFA is all of these things can be designed a million different ways. Badges can be used all sorts of different ways to reflect different things that a community finds valuable. Right now there are no badge proposals, but let me show you some badges that we currently... So the same thing with roles is first there's a badge proposal. Someone puts up an idea for a new badge. Currently there's no badge proposals. The second step is you come and see what badges exist. So ours is an organization, so we have things like a tech support badge or a facilitator badge, which means if you're facilitating meetings, you hold this badge in order to be able to facilitate that meeting, and this badge gives you some benefits. So this particular badge gives you a 2.5% bonus in H-voice. So we're saying if you've gone through the facilitator training, we're going to say that you're more valuable, at least your perspectives are more valuable in HIFA, so we're going to give you a bonus to how much voice you have in our community. So you can use badges to, you know, increase the amount of voice people have or decrease it, or any of those, you know, token levers. So for example, you might have an apprentice badge, or someone who's new to the community, maybe you give them a 10%. So they're getting 90% less voice than they otherwise would, if that's what you want to do in your community, right? Anyway, I'm just trying to give you guys the whole lay of the land. You got a question?
Yeah, so the question is voice always generalized throughout all of seeds? Or can voice be specified to certain areas? Like you might get a voice in tech development because you have a badge that shows that you know a thing or two about technology.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, sorry. This is HIFA, which is the organization tool. So every organization is going to have its own voice for that organization. So we've already kind of done that. HIFA is the tech company, and we have our HIFA voice for HIFA. You saw 5 other organizations. One of them was about movement building, and it's going to have its voice that's focused on movement building. So that's happening on that level. We can get more meta, and we plan to do this, where each proposal category is going to have separate voice associated with it. So right now we already have it where we have 3 different types of proposals coming to seeds. So now I'm switching from HIFA to seeds, bear with me. We have milestone proposals. Too much detail. I'll tell you about 2. We have an alliance proposal, which is allied organizations are coming up and asking for an alliance share with seeds. That's one category, and we have campaigns, which are people wanting to do invites. You have different voice for each one of those categories. So if you're voting on stuff on alliances, that's not impacting the voice you have for campaigns. And how this plans to scale when we use seeds for regions is we want to have a separate voice for, say, housing, or a separate voice for food, or a separate voice for finances, or whatever. Each category of a proposal that's coming up will have its separate category for voting. So that means people are going to be able to delegate their voice to people based off of topics. So instead of me saying, I'm going to delegate all my voice to Nick, and he's going to make decisions for everything for me, I'm going to say, you know what, I really care about the economics. So I'm going to keep my voice for economics because I care about that and I want to vote on that. But I don't care about housing topics. But this guy's really smart with housing. I really like him. So I'm going to give her my housing tokens, or housing voice tokens, right? And delegate my voice to them. So what's really cool about this voting system, it's the best part of a representative democracy where you can have people represent you if you don't care. But at any point, you don't have to wait 4 years. You could take your delegation back and give it to somebody else. And you get to delegate your voice based off the different topics that are being governed. All right, so that's how seeds works. HIFA works similarly, but that's probably a longer conversation. That's a lot, guys. I mean, I don't even know if this is where you wanted to go. I'm just taking you there. Yeah. Cool. Do we have any other questions? Or did I just break your heads?
How long is it that you've been working on this? Because it seems like it's a huge amount of work and ideas that have been put together. How long's it taken?
Yeah, the seeds white paper, which was the original idea for this, was published July of 2017. So that's when like the initial idea was incepted and it started getting built from that point. So we've been on about a 4.5 year journey now, I guess, at this point. So a long time, and it's freaking overwhelming, and I'm needing a break. So I'm actually taking a month off. So well, thank you. Any other questions?
Quick one is, one of the things I hear from people trying to get into seeds is that there's so much information to try and understand how to act as a good citizen and what seeds even is. Do you have any plan going forward to make the onboarding a little bit smoother for people who are discovering seeds?
You see, this is the push and pull of decentralized systems. Because if we wanted it to be decentralized, we couldn't be too prescriptive up front. Otherwise, it's not decentralized. One person's kind of driving the whole ship. So it needed to go through this period of chaos, which is really what it's been like for the last 4 years, for other leaders and other organizations to get set up, which is what we're just literally seeing now. So it's taken us about 4 years of chaos for 5 other organizations to form to be like, look, we're going to handle different aspects of seeds. One of them is focused on the movement building and like onboarding journey. So they're going to take that over. It shouldn't have been Haifa's role to do that, because if Haifa was taking on the educational journey, the research and design, the tech building, and the storytelling and all of that, then it's centralized in Haifa. If you shut Haifa down, the whole thing fails, right? So we couldn't be the ones to take care of that onboarding journey. So unfortunately, that means that it's been like to me, I think it's actually been kind of a benefit, because it's been a really strong filter. Because in these early stages of seeds, we need people who, 1, can handle incredible complexity, 2, are really interested in it, so they're willing to jump through all the hoops, you know, and 3, that can handle all the chaos. So it's kind of been filtering out people who didn't fit that criteria, and the people who stayed are incredible, awesome humans that have been able to build the foundations. Not saying people who didn't stay aren't awesome, it's just a different type of person, right? So I kind of see it as like, you know, settlers versus pioneers, you know, et cetera. So the pioneers are the ones that kind of stayed to pioneer the system, and they're making it easier for the settlers to come. I think that's still, you know, it's an emergent process. But right now there are 3 different organizations all focused on different onboarding journeys, which is also what I think is necessary, is that there isn't one onboarding journey, because then they control so much. Because if people just get to come to them and they say, this is how it is, they're driving the narrative, right? So we needed to make sure that there's, you know, healthy competition and how that narrative driving is being directed, right?
Yeah, and this one's even really super quick and easy. You told me before, but what does SEEDS stand for?
Yeah, so SEEDS as an acronym is Sowing Economically and Ecologically Decentralized Societies. So it's a framework for setting up new type of economic systems for new type of societies that are focused on ecological restoration, which is when, if you like dive into the protocols, so much of them are about, you know, tracking your contributions to the restoration of our planet and then giving you rewards for doing that. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, I'll have a last little question, which is for the Lightleaders Mastermind. This look like exactly the kind of things we want. I applied for the DHO. I think it's in beta mode. Do you feel like ready now for an organization like ours to try it?
So we've been using the do ourselves for the last 3 years now. It's probably been built, and we're just now opening it up for other organizations. So if this really excites you and you are a regenerative organization, because those are the first ones we're going to pick, I can send you the application link, and then some people are going to help you get it set up. What's the definition of a regenerative organization? Yeah, it's a broader definition, and we're going to be the ones making that decision, so that's up for you to try to convince us what's regenerative. To me, it's one that's looking to be net positive for humanity. So if you're making a net positive impact by your actions, then you're regenerative. So it's about regeneration. So sustainability is about net neutral. What our current systems is shut up, Rieki. Okay.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rieki. Thanks so much, Nick.